Welcome to Montana's Peer Network Recovery Talks podcast. I'm Jim Haney, and today we have a group of us. Some are current peer supporters, past peer supporters. We're all talking about peer support today, and I'm just going to have you kind of go around and introduce yourselves. Andy, do you want to start off, and then?
I'm Andy Daniel. I am the technology coordinator for Montana's Peer Network.
I'm Leah Wetzel. I've been drop-in center coordinator, trainer, and now family peer supporter with Montana's Peer Network.
I'm Nikki Russell. I am a certified peer support specialist, and I work for Montana's Peer Network.
This is Beth Ayers. I am family peer support lead at Montana's Peer Network and provide family peer support at the Children's Clinic.
I am Kayla Myers, and I am a family peer supporter as well at the Children's Clinic in Billings.
And again, I'm Jim Haney. I'm the executive director, and I guess I'll start this off, but I'm going to hand it over. Leah, I'm going to start with you. When I first became a peer supporter, it didn't turn out to be exactly what I kind of thought it was going to be. And I had no idea that 15 years later, I would be here at this organization, that I even dreamed of starting an organization, any of that. I just had this notion of wanting to share my own recovery experience with other people. That was how it started for me. And so, what's that like for you? I mean, being a peer supporter, what has your experience been?
So I luckily was able to receive peer support at the beginning of my recovery at a drop-in center locally here in Great Falls. It's no longer there anymore, but the peer supporters that supported me through one of the hardest times of my life, and showed up for court hearings and just showed up when I needed them. And so to be in a space where you're not being judged and people are meeting you where you're at, when we already are hard on ourselves, and sometimes we build all kinds of barriers for ourselves as well, but just having those people that be there and have authentic, real conversations with and supporting you along the way. So later on, I went on to take PS 101, and I had my taste of what that's like in a outpatient setting. And I was the first peer support at one of the places, and I really had to advocate for who I was, what I was there for, and advocate for my peers, because a lot of times you get in those clinical situations and settings, and that's all it is, and they have their blinders on. So just really trying to humanize the space and share my experience I learned a lot of good skills. I had some pretty badass clinicians that I got to work with right off the bat, taught me good skills with DAP notes, those sorts of things. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's been an amazing experience, and I don't get to offer much actual peer support anymore, but I'm really excited about this family peer support project at Benefis.
Yeah, excellent.
I can relate to the humanizing part, being in a clinic as a family peer supporter. They are treating the child, and sometimes they can put a lot of the responsibility or the judgment on who's taking care of the kiddo. And so to really humanize the family as they are people doing the best that they can, is kind of what I've found at the children's clinic. Sorry, Nikki.
No, I could relate to Leah too. When you were talking about the clinical aspect of things, I had this when I started recovery. I had this like kind of a realization or like an internal awakening that just made me feel like I just wanted to go out and I just wanted to spread that around to everybody. Like I wanted everybody to experience that hope and that inspiration for life. I had lived in that kind of dark space for so long, and I wanted to be able to like help people get there. And so when I became a peer support specialist, I was really quick to realize that recovery is different from clinical. And when you work in a clinical atmosphere, it's really interesting to try to spread that inspiration and that love around, And I kind of got hit with that a little bit, and this last year I was working with pregnant and parenting people with a substance use disorder. And even saying that is kind of a clinical way to say it, and I actually felt like, okay, this is an opportunity for me to be able to like sit in front of somebody and really connect, because that's what peer support is for me. It's like that connection. I get to connect with the person that I am now internally and try to connect with them in that same way too. But what ended up happening was I hit some wounds that I hadn't healed yet. And so instead of being inspiring and hopeful, I started to find myself turning inwards, I guess, and kind of hitting those places where I needed to heal too. So I kind of discovered that peer support was mutual. It was mutual. Healing happens together with both me and my peer.
Nice. Mutuality and peer support. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I think there can be these conflicts that happen with you come in, like for me, I came in as a person in recovery. I had 14 years in recovery, and then I went to work in this very traditional mental health center, and their views of recovery were very different, right? And I think, Andy, I'm gonna call on you here, only because I kind of know your experience. Your experience was very different, but like, right, that how the treatment system bumps up against recovery.
Yeah, so I was hired at the same time that another peer supporter was hired. The organization had a grant that specified they had to have peer supporters. They had never had peer supporters before. They had medical, dental, and behavioral health all together, but never a peer supporter. So they hired us. We were a couple weeks in when we went to PS 101. And recovery even was a weird concept to me at that time, because I have mental health diagnoses, but no substance use history. And so the concept of recovery I didn't really understand it until I took PS 101, that there's recovery in mental health too. So I loved PS 101. I was excited. I went back to that organization, and there were things sort of right off the bat that I was not happy about, but I thought, this is new. They don't know what they're doing yet. But it was things like we were out in cubicles. We didn't have a space where we could meet with peers in the office. And I know that's not, I would rather not meet people in an office anyway, but it was just not conducive to that. And after I was fired, so was my other peer supporter, after 6 weeks. And it's still within the probationary period. Like there wasn't anything that I did
Right.
wrong. I didn't break any policy, you know, those kinds of
Right.
things. So, so I got let go. And so did the other peer supporter. That organization hired 4 more, I think, after me.
Mhm.
And I think the longest one was about 6 months. Everybody else stays a couple of months or you know, whatever, and they leave or they get fired. I don't know. It's not like I know the history of the
Sure.
employment of everybody, but and the one who was there the longest, Jim actually met with her in this organization, in this health center, and her desk was in a hallway.
Mhm.
I mean, it had sort of gotten worse, right? Like
I
they
remember that. Yeah.
they needed the cubicle for something else, right? So the peer supporter
Yeah.
just got shoved in a
a
little
hallway.
alcove
Yeah.
in the hallway. I mean, it was
Yeah.
just
Yeah. Yeah.
so they never really embraced peer support, and the requirements of that grant changed to not require peer support.
Right.
And as soon as that happened, they just
They dropped
gave it up. They're not going to do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. Kayla, what has your experience been like as a family peer supporter?
Yeah, I think I can relate kind of to every ounce of this, like different components of it. So I think kind of like what Nikki said about you know, starting this profession, I think I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is something that I get to do. Like I just get to talk to people and connect with them and like I understand where they're coming from. They understand where I'm coming, you know, and I'm like, and this is what I'm doing. It didn't feel real in a, you know, in a sense.
Mhm.
But then I think once you get going, like Nikki also kind of talked about, like it also becomes triggering because you are using, so it's like this fine line of having to use your story to connect with other individuals,
Mhm.
to build that connection. And while it comes so naturally, it almost, you have to walk a line of not interjecting your life into their life and having the same expectations or outcomes, or you know, everyone is in charge of their own path and their own destiny. And I think I think that that's a hard, so it's like using your own story to relate and to connect, but then you have to take yourself out of the scenario and remember that it's their story and their life. So I think it is this like, and it can also trigger parts of you that aren't healed or maybe can still be an open wound. I think a lot of the time when I'm supporting family, so I support the whole unit, or I support the parents and caregivers, but in return, the family unit is then benefited. But there's times also that like, because of my own like mental health diagnoses and lived experience from my childhood and you know, teens, adolescents, and then me becoming a parent and having a child with autism, I think sometimes there's moments where I'm like, I relate more with the child or the teenager because it reminds me a lot of like what I needed or what I wish I would have had, but I have to remember to stay. So it is this like, it's also very, it's a checks and balance for myself also, where I'm like, oh, you know, that's triggering this part of me. I need to go dive into that, not in the interaction with my peer. But it is also very healing, in retrospect as well for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think, so for everybody, do you think this is the biggest challenge to being a peer supporter, is figuring out that balance between my own stuff and the person I'm trying to support, and how do I how do I do that? Do you think that's the biggest challenge? I know that was a challenge for me when I started. You have to kind of learn that, and what does that look like, and how do I actually support someone,
Yeah.
right? Like
I
what does
think,
that actually mean? It sounds good, but how do you actually do that every day?
yeah, I think for me, it was like, it became really hard. And when it was hard, it was like hard. And I was stuck in that. Like, but you know, I wanted the outcome for them more than they wanted it for themselves. And that's something that is just, it just takes practice. It just takes, you know, training yourself and staying present and staying, you know, and really listening to my own self too, and my own self-care, and like what is good for me to come into this job to be able to support other people. Um, but then I also think that, like they were talking about too, like from a clinical or a system standpoint, that can be really challenging too, because even though you would think that, you know, before when I was a mom navigating the resources and trying to figure it all out, it was really hard and it was exhausting. And even being on the inside now, like the inside of a clinic, or, you know, having phone numbers and connections, it's still hard and exhausting, and it still feels the same. So I think that that's more now what I have a hard time with is like navigating those the systems for
Sure.
families. Yeah.
So I think for me, the hardest part is that, like Kayla said, we bring our own history and our own experience into the job. So we're not just, you know, flipping burgers where we can like put our home life aside and go to work and not think about things. You know, we're really taking our hurts and our hopes and all of that into the job. And so when I'm not, you know, when I am feeling depressed, or I'm just not feeling 100%, it's harder to go to a job where you have to really be open. And then the other thing is, you know, I'm still raising children with mental health disorders. So sometimes my home is in, I wouldn't say crisis, but, you know, things have come up, and then I have to put that aside and go into work. So the whole thing is, I guess, a little tricky for myself. And I've really learned how to take care of myself in it. That, yeah, if I'm feeling depressed or overwhelmed, that it's okay to take, you know, a break and not force myself through working with, you know, the working, the family. So.
Leah, I saw you shaking your head when she talked about that.
Yeah, I totally get the part with like we're showing up work because it's emotional work, whether we're supporting others or sharing our story, or you know, because it hits home with us. And yeah, when Beth said, you know, when our home life is maybe not in crisis but disarray, because I'm a parent of 2 children, 2 teenagers with mental health, you know, behavior health conditions. And so it gets tricky, especially as a single parent. But I wanted to say, I think it is very much so a journey of learning that balance, because, and I learned the hard way when I was fresh out of PS 101. I had a peer that I was offering peer support to ask me to be her sponsor, and I'm like, sure. And that doesn't work out. And I found out real quick it's unethical. But sometimes I learn through my own challenges and experiences, and then I'll never forget. But definitely when I'm offering peer support, I got to remind myself that it's about them. It may be a healing journey for me, but what worked for me may be totally different than what they need. And what I feel like I need to lead them to, that may not be part of their journey, and I'm not them. I have my own experience, and it's up to me to take care of that self-care, mind, body, soul, whatever it is that a person may, for me, it's
Yeah.
creator. I need to be spiritually fit too when I show up. And so, yeah. And somebody told me something that, people don't always remember what you tell them, but they remember how you make them feel. And so I take that with me, whether I'm speaking, training, or offering support, and leave myself out of it. It feels good and it's fulfilling, because that's what we get out of it, is we're doing good things. We're empowering individuals to, get on their feet and get on their journey.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I could jump in there. When everybody was talking, I think that one of my number one thoughts that worked against me was I need to be something that I'm not in order to make the other person feel comfortable. And sometimes comfortability isn't the goal or the focus. And I really needed to overcome that in my meetings and in my work with peers and in this business as altogether, just in every aspect. I recognize that light that awakening, or that whatever I was talking about at the beginning, that there was an essence to that was really real. But there was another part of that was me showing up as this fun, happy, healed person that I needed to actually deepen. And that's what I think, when I look back at my first experiences, like what Andy was talking about and what a lot of us maybe have gone through, if I would have quit at that point, I would not have deepened my recovery. I would not have been able to show up authentically to be that supportive person for somebody else, to be able to sit in those uncomfortable spaces and say, I don't know. We were talking about that a little bit today. I don't know. I don't have the answers. I can't fix it. I can't fix me. I can't definitely fix you. And it's just about that. I think it's self-awareness. I think a lot of it is self-awareness, but I think a lot of it is being able to reach out and ask for help, which I know that that's who I'm being for them, but also I need to be able to do that for myself and for them. I mean, it's that full circle, I think.
Yeah. I think as a peer supporter, you have to be able to get comfortable with them being uncomfortable. You have to be able to sit there and recognize their suffering, and you can empathize with that, and maybe even at times sympathize with that. And you have to get kind of used to that part of it, that's real, because you're not there to fix them. It's their journey. And that's a big piece. That was for me a big piece. I ran a drop-in center, so I saw a lot of people each day, and they're all at different places in their journey. But for the most part, people are struggling, and that's why they're coming in. And I'm not there to solve it all. I'm just there to support them and be present. And I can just share my own experience and listen and validate their experience. And for some people, that's what they're looking for, to be heard, to be validated. And then there's a few people who are like, fix it for me. I'll fix it for me, solve it. And that's not my role. And that, I know when I started, that was a internal conflict for me, feeling like I needed to do that. And then when I went to training, because this is going back, I was a peer supporter a long time ago. And so we didn't have certification and all the trainings and all that kind of stuff going on. And so we were just trying to figure it out. I mean, there was about 6 of us in the state trying to call each other. What do I do? I got this person, and how do I, but I think that internal work, everyone's touching on that. there's an internal piece to that of growth that has to happen, and you have to be ready for it. Yeah.
I do want to say something then about another thing that I think is really challenging, because we hear it from other peer supporters and it's sort of related to mine, is that organizations are not ready for peer supporters or don't know the scope of practice or,
Yeah.
whatever. And we spend a lot of time talking to peer supporters about how to talk to their employer who is asking them to go outside their scope of practice or that kind of thing. And so I think once you kind of have this stuff that everybody else is talking about sort of figured out, right now I'm feeling pretty comfortable with this, you start to notice the things that you're doing that are not peer support, that your organization is now saying, well, go take them grocery shopping, right? Like,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. That's a great point.
We
I was
have a
just
lot.
talking. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Kayla.
No, it's just funny that that's coming up because I was just talking. I had a social worker stop by yesterday to see how she can refer, patients or families to us, and we were kind of talking about that because there used to be parent partners, and they did a lot of different things than Beth and I do with family peer support at the children's clinic, and I kind of described it to her yesterday. I'm like, we're not a doctor, we're not a counselor, we're not a social worker. Like we kind of, it's kind of like a ball, like where we like kind of graze by each thing. Like we have to take notes, and we are in systems. We can, we're bound by confidentiality, HIPAA, but we're not. It was funny because she was like, no, I think it's great to just give people that space to just be where they're at for a second. I said, and then all the other stuff falls into place. Then I can tell the doctor, this is what they're actually, needing, or this resource is needed. Then a referral can be put out for that. But yeah, it was funny. We were kind of she got it. She understood exactly what the encompass of,
Yeah, it's hard to get a referral for a family that's having some sort of hardship and not help them because they're not within my scope of practice is a very hard. I think every parent could definitely use support. And so to have that referral made. But I have to say at the beginning of my job there, I kind of took everything and then I had to backtrack, and that was really hard to be like, okay, here's really what I can do, here's who I can help. So that was tricky. It would have been easier to just come in with that scope of practice and stick to it.
It takes some time to find your footing, I think, that way, especially when you're working in a clinic or a treatment center. It takes a little time for both the system and for you to figure that out. And then it's like, when you do figure it out, it's like, oh yeah, this is it. Like you can sense it. Like this is where I'm supposed to be. That other stuff was like a little bit uncomfortable. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, and I think it's also sticking to that self-care for your own self, because like I kind of did the same thing where I'm like, yeah, I can kind of, it kind of fits. Like I'll help them for, I would extend the boundaries of my, should have been my own boundary and also my professional boundary.
Right.
And then I did the very thing that I'm trying to heal and get away from, is like people pleasing and trying to be the savior and the helper and the hero.
Right.
And so, but then I'm like, my caseload is now like, I have way too much happening. I'm not meeting deadlines. I'm not, now my mental health is like, so it's like really those things kind of teach you and help you to learn the hard way. And it's like Leah said earlier, like once you learn the hard way, then you're like, no, I'm sorry. I can't. Now it's so much easier for me to stand in my power and say, I'm sorry, this isn't in my scope of practice. I wish I could help, I wish I could, but I'm sorry. Yeah. But that's also empowering to be able to say, I would have been like, oh my God, I'm scared to tell them. Now I'm like, no, I'm sorry, I can't. And it usually it's fine, and it's weird.
Yeah.
Because before that would have felt very, yeah. So, yeah.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for sharing your insights on peer support. This was a really great conversation, very insightful. And I'm sure that our listeners, viewers, will get a lot out of it. There's a lot of experience right here in this room. A lot of people, a lot of lives that we've each impacted over the years. And so thank you to each one of you for taking the time today.
Thank you, Jim.
And thank you to the listeners. We hope you tune in to other Recovery Talks podcasts from Montana's Peer Network. Bye-bye.